Yeah, I guess it's time to go.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll catch a few stragglers, on the way. But welcome to this, I don't know actually, 7th Talkwalker webinar this year. And this time we're going to talk about the social networks to watch in 2020. And I'm here with our very special guest, Chris Penn from Trust Insights. So Chris and I actually know each other, we've known each other for a while, I guess.
Yeah,
we've already done a couple...
Years.
Yeah, we've already done a couple of events even. We were at Social Media Marketing World earlier this year. And so I'm really happy to collaborate with Chris on this project. So about this research he put together using a little bit of the Talkwalker platform and other tools. So again, in case you didn't hear me earlier, the webinar hashtag is Social2020. Please feel free to use it throughout the webinar to tag Trust Insights and Talkwalker and to ask questions. We'll be getting them and we'll be addressing them at the end of the webinar. So really quickly, so you have a little bit of an agenda here. We'll be recapping a little bit the findings of the social networks to watch for 2020, and there'll also be some exclusive insights presented in this webinar. And we'll be also discussing what this means concretely for your 2020 strategy. And then finally, we'll be taking questions, so don't go anywhere before the end of the webinar, because that's actually the most interesting part of this webinar is the questions from the audience. So really looking forward to it. And Chris, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. And also, this is GoToWebinar. So if you don't use Twitter or you're not comfortable asking a question publicly, feel free to use the chat, the Q&A buttons in the webinar interface too if you want to ask questions there.
Definitely. Perfect. So let's get started.
All right. So social media is kind of an interesting place right now. There's a lot of people who are doing it. There's a lot of people who are grasping onto every shiny object. And as marketers, I'm sure you feel this way. I know I certainly do on a regular basis. It feels like we're trying to do too much. And we're kind of scattered a little bit. There's this thing, there's that thing, there's TikTok, there's this. What should we be focusing on? When we looked at the results from the 2019 Price Waterhouse CEO survey, one of the questions they were asked is, what are you going to focus on in the next year to drive growth, to drive revenue? And the number one thing CEOs said was operational efficiencies, which is CEO speak for budget cuts. What's the famous cartoon expression? Work harder, work smarter, not harder, but which it just means work harder.
Do more with less.
Do more with less. Another favorite marketing trope, business trope. Any way you slice it, the C-suite, the head office is asking all of us to be more focused, to focus on what matters and try to leave behind as many distractions as possible. And we're not doing such a hot job of that. If you look, social media spending is now like 12% of marketing budgets. This is from the August CMO survey, August 2019. 345 CMOs were surveyed by Duke University and were asked, how much are you spending on social media? And it's 12% of budget, which when you think about marketing budgets, marketing budgets themselves are between 8 and 11% of company revenue. That is not a small chunk of change. And what are we spending on? Everything under the sun, right? Every shiny object that comes along. So we are clearly showing a lack of focus here. At an event I was at last week, one of the questions that was asked of some of the companies that are doing a lot with data and analytics was, how much of your budget are you spending on data and analytics, machine learning, data science, anything to do with marketing data you have? And the answer from the companies that are doing it well is 20 to 25% of the marketing budgets, or double social's budget, because CMOs have said, and this is in the CMO survey as well, that good use of analytics drives more revenue and growth than social and mobile combined. So
in what way?
In helping companies be smart about what they spend their money on, which is really, really difficult if you don't measure. In fact, are we ready to move on from the poll?
Yeah, I think we can. So I'm going to hide the poll right now, and we'll go back to the next slide. There we go.
So some of the other challenges that come with this budget aspect are outside agencies are now performing a quarter of all social media activities, which is good for marketers who want to be efficient and spend time on what they're good at, but bad if those outside agencies aren't keeping current on what's important, what's working, what's not working. If they're if you got an outside agency that's stuck in 2016, they're saying, Facebook all day, every day. Well, maybe, but there's a lot's happened since 2016. I have seen a number of social media marketers talking about, how do I get more organic reach on Facebook? You don't. It's 2019. There is no organic reach on Facebook.
Yeah, and I think that's, even in my team, so as a marketing manager, it's the exact same thing. It's the whole question about training. How do you actually, stay current into what's happening in this industry, where you should focus your efforts? It really resonates to hear you talk about operational efficiencies, because that's the reality right now. They want us to focus on what drives results and what helps with business objectives, basically.
Yep. When you ask companies, how well can you quantify the impact of social media? A disappointing 24% of companies say they can quantify the impact of social. The other 76% of folks are just kind of either winging it or have absolutely no idea what is working and what's not. And that's frightening to me, because on the one hand, the CEO is saying, do more with less, focus on what works. And on the other hand, 75% of us are like, we don't know what works. And so somebody's getting fired, and it's probably not the CEO.
But on the bright side, so if we go back to that slide, we can see that at least less people are actually unable to show the impact of what they're doing. So at least it's, a little bit of a positive trend, but I agree it's a bit scary to still think that a third really don't know what they're doing. Basically.
Exactly. So if you can't measure and you don't know what's working, you're going to make, and your outside agencies are going to make some interesting and possibly ineffective or harmful decisions. So that's really what was the impetus for us to create this research. What we did was, we first used the Talkwalker platform to identify, we all know the major social networks, right? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on and so forth. What we used the Talkwalker platform is to find out, what are the networks that we don't know about? What are the ones that we should be paying attention to? Everything from, everyone's darling of the day, TikTok, to more regional platforms like Sina Weibo or QQ or RenRen, or all these other platforms that exist. Are we missing things? Are there things that you wouldn't think of as social networks but function as a social network? Mm-hmm. One of the important distinctions is that a social network derives its value from the users, right? A blog has value that is independent of how few or many people read it, right? A social network, if Facebook had one user, Facebook would be completely unhelpful, right? Mm-hmm. The network effect is what makes a social network a social network. So we started with that to identify what are the things that look like social networks, and then social media conversations are not useful quantifying, because not that many people talk about the thing. But as detailed in the 2017 book, Everybody Lies, people search for stuff all the time, and they search for things that you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable asking another human about. You don't want to embarrass yourself, like, how do I set up a Facebook account, right? If you're a marketing manager, you don't want to be typing, you want to be asking your staff, like, how do I set up a Pinterest account?
Yeah, it's not something you would put on Twitter either.
Exactly,
actually.
But you'll Google the heck out of it. So what we did is, once we took those results from Talkwalker, we fed them to the RF's SEO tool, got search volumes for that, blended that with Google's trend data, and built a model of 3,000 different search terms. How to set up a Facebook profile, how to set up a Pinterest profile, and so on and so forth. And then forecasted that forward based on the last 5 years worth of data into what 2020 is likely to look like. And we did this for two major categories. What we call account creation terms. Set up new Facebook page, set up how do I create a Facebook profile. And then we set up a second category of what we call quit terms. Delete Facebook, right? How do I delete my Instagram page? How do I erase Instagram? And we wanted to look at how often are people going to be searching for these different terms by social network? If everybody says, I'm signing up for TikTok, how to sign up for TikTok, they Google that a lot. But you have even more people saying, how do I delete my TikTok account? We're going to do a little bit of simple subtraction and say, is there a net change in the interest of people in each of these networks? And so our results so far have been, what networks are showing net growth, which is the orange bars on the right-hand side here. What networks do the joins searches outweigh the quit searches?
Okay, so basically here, if I understand correctly, on the left we're looking at number of, search intent for account creation, basically.
Yes.
In the middle, we're looking at search intent for people wanting to quit or delete the app, etc. And then we have the combination of these two graphs in a way to look at potential net growth for these social media. Very interesting.
Exactly. And so what we wanted to identify is, what are people searching for, and is there interest that's swaying people one way or the other? So the net results, the network that has the largest net growth is actually YouTube. 500,000 more searches of net growth, because not that many people look for how to delete their YouTube account. It doesn't happen. Then there's Discord, which a lot of people are probably right now scratching their heads going, what is Discord, right? If you don't have any interest in the gaming community or in the under 24 community, you may not have even heard of this. If you're familiar though with Slack or Microsoft Teams, Discord is a consumer-facing version of that, where people can get together to just, discuss their favorite games and things. But it's not a monolithic network. It's not like Twitter. There's only one Twitter. Like Slack, you can be in many different Discords, you can be in many different Slacks, and so on and so forth. And speaking of Slack, Slack is number 3 in terms of a network where people want to spend a lot of time. Now, if we go down to the bottom, we see that, yes, there's still a tremendous amount of interest in like Facebook and Instagram, but there is way more people who are looking to leave than to join. And even the darling of social media this year, TikTok, it's interesting. On the back end, if you look at some of the ad data that's out there, the major reason for TikTok's growth in the last year has been an enormous amount of ad spend by its parent company. And we see that reflected in the number of people who are now looking to delete their account. They're like, okay, I did my 6 seconds of dancing with, to imitating a fish, and now I'm done. So the initial
that was maybe the finding that surprised me, I guess, in your report. It was that whole relationship to TikTok, probably because, social media can be that kind of echo chamber, and I heard so much about it that you're like, oh, should I actually be doing something with TikTok next year? Or, it's always a question, kind of these thoughts that come by at some point, but that's very interesting.
So that's the initial findings from the research. So now let's talk about what these findings mean in aggregate and what you should be doing with them. There are 3 main trends from these findings in 2020. Private communities, YouTube, and blended listening. We're going to dig into each one of these things. One thing I do want to emphasize is in that finding, Facebook and Instagram are showing, net losses in the millions, right? When you have 2 billion users, that is literally 0.1%. So if you're a social media marketer, like, oh my God, I have to quit Facebook. No, please, you don't have to. Like, Facebook's not going away tomorrow. 2 billion people do not stop using an addictive service overnight. What we do want to encourage you, though, is to broaden your horizons, to look at some of these other things and see if your audience is there and if it makes sense for you to create some of these things. So let's dig into this first trend, this velvet rope community. Private communities, velvet rope communities like Slack, Discord, Microsoft Teams, all these different platforms allow you to have conversations in semi-private, Facebook groups to some degree as well. What we've seen behaviorally is people want to have conversations with people who have a like-minded interest around a topic without either seeing all the other stuff that happens like on Facebook, or it just outright in public where you have trolls and stuff like Twitter and its abuse problems. People are gravitating towards, let's just talk to the people we like about the things that we want to talk about. When you look at Slack, so this is from the RF's SEO tool, one of the things that is common to every Slack instance is there's always a name.slack.com.
Right.
You can see people putting up links that search engines can find. And it's astonishing, an average of 138 new Slack instances. So, for example, there's the Trust Insights Analytics for Marketers Slack. That's out there. If you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, you can join our public.
And there's tons of them. There's one for SpinSucks, the PR blog, for example. A really great one. There's one for Serial Marketer with David Berkowitz here in New York. There's one for Content Marketing World, actually, and Content Marketing Institute. That's really good, too. And I think we actually have some member in the room from that Slack group. So, yeah, I mean, Slack is amazing. And actually, but that number is impressive, like 138 new ones every day.
Yeah, can you imagine trying to keep track of 138 new groups a day on any platform, right? People want to spend time with other people that they like around a common interest. That's no surprise. And social's been trending this way a while. This is an example. This is the Analytics for Marketers Slack I mentioned briefly. If you're not familiar with Slack, this is what it looks like. By the way, for those who have a lot of gray hair like I do and have been on the internet for a while, this is going to seem really familiar. This is essentially someone took a really nice interface and slapped it over IRC. So back in the 90s, when you're dialing up to the internet was still a thing, you would use the same commands, the hashtags and things. A lot of what people say, this is brand new now, this is 20 years old now. But this Slack allows you those private communities where you can just have those conversations outside of what search engines can see and outside of what other social networks can see. There's no algorithm here either, which is really important. If you have a business and you're not running a Slack community, but you want to have access to your audience in an unfiltered way, this is one of the best ways to do it. When you have like a Facebook group, you are still competing with the Facebook newsfeed to be seen. When you have something like a Slack or Discord or Microsoft Teams or whatever, you are able to see everything everybody posts, which means you also have to do some more moderation and stuff and cull bad actors. But you see and your members see what you want to see.
Yeah, I guess it's still a responsibility to be present in the community and things like that and animate it. But I think a lot of people are still stuck on Slack as maybe a internal tool of communication. Mm-hmm. A lot of people still see it like that, but there's so much more. I mean, Slack is really a great there are great communities on Slack to join actually.
Yeah. This also means you need to change how you think about influencers. Right now in social media marketing today, most people, especially in B2C, think an influencer is somebody who has a really big audience and a big mouth, right? So a Kardashian, for example, is sort of the prototype, the archetypical influencer we use as a discussion point. As people gravitate away from the public feeds, having that big mouth and that big audience that 1/10 of 1% even see that person's posts matters less and less. What you have to do now is think about your influencers, to the extent that we want to keep using that term, as ambassadors. A lot of these Slack communities, they are private for a reason. They don't want marketers there, right?
Definitely.
Marketers ruin everything.
At least in terms of pure promotion. Yeah,
exactly. There's always that guy, and it's almost always a guy, who's like, hey, check out my new thing. We're like, no, go away. You have to think about how do you work with people who can be an ambassador and usher you into communities that you might not even know about. And then once you're there, vouch for you, yes, this person is not going to behave like a jerk, right?
Right. And so it's really more word of mouth. And,
yes. Real relationship building and leveraging your relationship with influencers. If you know folks who are let's say you're in B2B manufacturing and 10 people who have their own communities, or maybe they're part of a larger community, but they can speak on your behalf, as opposed to you having to be the marketer, the annoying marketer, and going in and broadcasting everyone beats you up. Yeah,
and maybe, at least, and they might not be promoting the brand, saying, for Talkwalker, for example, go, on Talkwalker and ask for a demo, or buy Talkwalker, blah, blah, blah. It's more, this is how I use Talkwalker.
Yeah,
this is what's happening, for example.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest sources of ambassadors that most companies don't think a lot about is their employees, right? Especially if you have subject matter experts on staff, you should 100% be working with them to figure out, where do you spend your time? When you need to do professional development, where do you spend your time? So, for example, one of those, quote, social networks that I belong to is a company called Stack Overflow. It's all programmers and hardcore techies. But the value of it comes from users' interaction, so it meets the definition of a social network, right? So if you are targeting that market, you would absolutely want to find who are the most active people who are contributing solutions about your technology on Stack Overflow and talk to those folks, right? So there's so much more. That's one of the reasons why I love the Talkwalker platform, because it's not social media monitoring. There's forums, there's blogs, there's news, because that's word of mouth spreads in so many different ways. You've got to stay focused on where are your subject matter experts spending their time? Use that information to help guide your own strategy.
Definitely.
Trend 2, as you saw, it's YouTube world, and it feels weird to be talking YouTube like it's some new thing, because it's not. Google bought it in 2005, right? So it's 15 years old.
Right. It's not a new thing, but I'm actually very curious about that one. So new poll, guys. So get back on your screens. I'd like to know, how often does your brand, your organization, whoever, or in your agencies, I'd like to know how often does your brand post on YouTube? Do you actually post on YouTube? Do you have a strategy on YouTube? Because you might, and I did that choice, and right now that this is the choice that's winning at 48%, we don't have a YouTube strategy. So hey, people that are using YouTube, please show up now because it's not looking good. 47% still staying pretty solid, and we're at half the room that has voted so far.
I'm not surprised by this because people think YouTube is a video site. They don't realize it's this world's second largest search engine, and it's a social network. Now, granted, most of the time the comments are pretty idiotic on YouTube.
I mean, it can go in all directions for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. So, okay, guys, we're at 60% of the room that has voted. So I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the results.
And that's astonishing to me. 53% of people do not have a YouTube strategy. 28% are posting monthly. Only 9% posting weekly. And I realize this is N of one. I post daily on YouTube every weekday because.
Yeah, but as a marketer, I'm impressed. I mean, I guess I just don't have the right processes in place, to actually make that happen.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that.
It's not something we actually do, so. Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed, and you can see that 0% of the room is actually posting daily. So you're
well, let's dig
you're a model.
Yeah, let's dig into what the YouTube strategy, what YouTube means for us. All right, we know, yes, it is a YouTube world out there, right? When people think of YouTube, they think of PewDiePie, right? They think of the Minecraft channels. They think of the big entertainment houses. And yes, YouTube can seem like it's an unmanageably large environment with so many millions and millions of people, participating in the service. But as with everything when it comes to social media and digital marketing, you're not trying to win all of YouTube, right? It's like you're not trying to win all of Twitter. You're trying to reach the right people. And so one of the things you can do with a good social media monitoring platform like Talkwalker is find your niche. So this is an example from YouTube where I used Talkwalker to extract a couple 100,000 videos, first about YouTube in general, and then a sample of people who are creating YouTube videos of any kind about analytics. Most of them actually are sports analytics folks who want to refine some of the queries, but you can find suddenly, I'm going to go back here for a second, the median for the most popular people on YouTube, the median number of views is 162,000 views, right? But when you go down to the bottom 10% of companies that still get more than 100 views on YouTube, these are manageable numbers, right? When you look in the analytics space, suddenly you're talking a couple thousand views. These are not PewDiePie releases or Casey Neistat releases a new video and it's 10 million views, and everyone's benchmarking themselves against that. No.
Or like the top ad, in your industry, that was produced with like millions of dollars and things like that.
Exactly. When you look at like Microsoft Visual Studio and PCG Digital and these folks are publishing stuff that's getting a respectable amount of views, but your YouTube strategy is more than, don't try to be the top of YouTube. Be the top of your niche of what people are searching for on YouTube. That's a really important thing. The second thing on YouTube is that people forget YouTube is part of Google and is integrated into Google's ads system. This is where my caution about outside agencies really comes back. If your agency that you're using for video or for advertising is not current with the times, you could be missing huge opportunities. One of the best strategies out there for the last couple of years has been this thing called RLSA, remarketing lists for search ads. When somebody types in social media monitoring tool, you can run ads to that person, right? You can run a search ad that shows up and you retarget those people and they're interested. With YouTube being integrated into Google, you can show ads to people on YouTube, pre-roll, lower third, post-roll, interstitial, whatever, to people who search for that thing. So, for example, with Talkwalker, if you wanted to advertise social media marketing software and you had a 10-second spot, anyone who searched for social media marketing software and then went to YouTube to watch, Gordon Ramsay's cooking show would see a 10-second ad for Talkwalker up front. And they're like, oh yeah, I was just searching for that the other day. Right. Google knows. It's funny how that works.
Google knows everything.
Exactly. But because it has the power of Google's machine learning tools and stuff behind it, it is a very, very low cost, highly effective way of winning back that audience and getting them in multiple places where someone's behavior on YouTube is different than on Google. Like when you Google for something and search, you're searching for something. When you're watching stuff on YouTube, you are sitting down to watch. It's functionally, behaviorally like a TV in a lot of ways. So think about and this goes to again, that outside agency thing, make sure that you're thinking about the content that you put on YouTube, both organically and paid, to serve someone who is behaviorally sitting down to watch something. So there are a lot of brands like MailChimp is one of them that's doing an amazing amount of original content, like shows, because they understand you go to YouTube to sit down and watch something, not to immediately go back to work.
Right.
So, you could have, for example, like a Talkwalker interviews series of stuff that people would sit down and watch behaviorally.
So basically, so really use that potential to retarget people going on YouTube, basically. Yep. Very interesting.
And most important, get your skills up to date on organic and paid. The third thing is on that content model. YouTube has an entire academy. It's called YouTube Academy for Creators. If you haven't gone through it, you should go through it. It's free. That will teach you what you need to know to succeed at YouTube. And one of the things that has been valuable, this was published in 2014, by the way, it's still valid, it still works, is having this Hero Hub health model. YouTube's recommendation is once a quarter, you build a big, expensive hero piece of content. Now, big, wide, thought leader piece, well shot, framed, looks pro, and you run ads to support it, right? To establish yourself as a thought leader. On a monthly basis, you have hub content, which is instead of why, like why is social listening important? You have what is social listening, and you dig into stuff. It could be like a recording of a webinar, but you spend some budget on it, you put some campaign effort on it, but that is sort of the middle part of your strategy. And then the third part of your YouTube strategy is the help strategy. This is high frequency, low production cost videos. This is what I do every day. I run a series on my channel called You Ask, I Answer, and all I do is sit in front of a camera for 7 to 9 minutes a day and answer questions like how do what's the ROI how do you measure the ROI of a Reddit post? Like,
and you take questions also from your audience,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And the wonderful thing about that strategy, which is based on Marcus Sheridan's book, They Ask, You Answer, is you never run out of content, right? Because every industry has questions like, how do I do this? What's this mean? When should I do this? If you focus on that, you are aligned with the questions that people will type into YouTube naturally. How-to questions are some of the most popular searches. And B, you create an enormous body of content, which if you are using all of today's modern marketing tools, you can turn into other forms of content. When you put up a YouTube video, you rip the audio out of that. Congratulations, you have an MP3 file for a podcast. Take that, send it out for transcription to a service like Otter.ai. Congratulations, now you have a blog post. If I speak for 10 minutes before coffee, that's about, most people speak at about 150 words a minute. That's 1,500 words. Imagine you now putting up a 1,500 word blog post every day on your blog, and a podcast, and a video, all from one piece of content, right?
That's intense.
And then those blog URLs get wrapped up into your newsletter, your email newsletter every week, and now you're taking this content process and really elevating it using this Hero Hub help model. The help provides you all of the tactical content that fills your social calendar. The hub is like your major campaigns, and then Hero is like the big thought leadership pieces that you elevate from the stuff in the hub and the help models that gets the highest resonance. One of the reasons we're doing this webinar is because we saw a lot of people asking, this is the time of year for strategy and planning. So
in terms of content strategy on YouTube, to recap, we have one big thought leadership piece where that's really craft and invest a bit more time and add money behind. You have the hub, which is more about, what is social listening, etc. For example, if we take Talkwalker as an example. And then we have the shorter, faster, quicker help video that can be, if we go like all the way like you, daily. Yes. Why, what, how? This is an example of my channel. There's the daily videos just popping up and everything. And by the way, there's an entire discipline of video SEO that you should be looking at and learning as well. All right. Well, so now we're gonna kick things up a notch and introduce the concept of blended listening. So if you're not using social listening, you're definitely not using blended listening. And this is exclusive content, right? This is new. In the report. Blended listening means using different listening tools at different points in the customer journey, right? So if you do a digital customer journey mapping, this is an example for my company's website. There's all these different channels like Facebook and YouTube and the podcast and organic search and public speaking and email newsletters. No one tool, as much as I love Talkwalker, there's no one tool that covers everything, right? So you need to have a toolkit of the best tools available to do all the major channels in your customer journey, and you have to pay attention to the order in which they occur in the journey so that you know what you should be listening for, right? So in this case, in our example here, Facebook and YouTube are really up front, which means that I want to not only use a social listening tool like Talkwalker, but I also want to make sure that I'm listening for
Is my social strategy doing what it needs to do to build awareness, right? If I was doing social listening on my social channels and I was seeing all of my posts or my competitors' posts, whatever, all saying, buy now, at the awareness stage in the customer journey, that's going to fall flat.
Right.
So you want a blended toolkit that helps you understand what you're doing at each stage in the customer journey. You need a tool for social, for news, for blogs, for forums, for videos. You need to have that to cover a lot of those major digital channels. You need great search data. So if you don't have a great search SEO tool to listen to what people are typing into Google and Bing and Yahoo, I don't even know if Yahoo exists anymore. If you don't have that to...
Well, there's so many now. There's also Quant, for example, in France. There's all kinds of
Baidu in China.
Definitely.
But you need a search platform because search, again, going back to what we were saying about the research itself, people will type things into a search and then they will not say out loud. And if you're running one of these private communities, if you own it and you have administrative rights, you can also be extracting and listening using data extraction tools to listen to what you talk about in the community, especially if you have a community where it's really thriving and you're not the one starting all the discussions anymore. You now should be using that data to calibrate, is my private community of people we know are interested in this thing, is what they're talking about what we're seeing in search? Is what we're seeing in search reflected in social media? What are the overlaps? What are the differences among these different channels?
Right, and am I maybe focusing on the right issues, in my communication?
Exactly. So let's look at an example of putting all these pieces together. How would this look to blend some of these tools together to build a campaign that will help you take advantage of social networks in 2020? You would start with social listening, right? To get the qualitative. I put in Google Analytics. What are all the phrases? This is Talkwalker's quick search tool, looking at 13 months of conversations about Google Analytics in what's called bigrams, 2-word phrases. I wanted to get a sense of what are the discussion topics. I'm not going to quantify them because, again, people will ask Google questions they won't say out loud, but I at least want to get the lexicon of my environment. Now imagine doing this for your industry or whatever. I'll take that data, I'll feed it into an SEO tool. This is the RS SEO tool. And this gives me search volumes for each of those terms that Talkwalker elevated. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I have a sense of how to rank them, not on what people say, but on what people search for. And that's an important difference.
So first you determine, okay, people are talking about these terms when talking about Google Analytics, and then you correlate with search volume to see if the actual people searching for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Qualitative first, then quantitative to quantify that. Then you take the search terms and you use Google's trending software blended with the search volume to figure out when are people going to be talking about these things, because you now want to be able to time it. So this is using predictive analytics, time series forecasting. The next week, so this week is, today is the 24th, so next week, the number one search term out of that whole list is actually going to be machine learning. So if I was wanting to create social content or video or anything, I want to have some content ready for next week on machine learning. Now, look out a little ways, look out into like November, December, and you start to see like the Facebook pixel actually going to be one of the top terms that week. It's sort of down on the right-hand side. I would want to have content now, start building content so that I have something to publish about the Facebook pixel in a couple months.
So basically, just take me through quickly through this graph. So when we see, the number we're seeing is like how high on the priority list it should be, basically.
That's right.
The bluest it is, the highest it should be on your priority list.
That's right.
For that specific week, for example.
Exactly, for that week. So using predictive analytics, you can get a week-by-week analysis of the terms that you validated from Talkwalker, from the conversations and the news and the blogs and the forums and everything. All these things should be also, when you create that content, it should be in regards to Google Analytics, because that was the original term we started with Talkwalker. So not machine learning content in general on the week of October 27th, but machine learning as it relates to Google Analytics. So how can you write a blog post or a video or a social post saying, here's what we know about machine learning's use in Google Analytics. For example, there's the Insights button in the upper right-hand corner of Google Analytics. That is their machine learning facility. Understanding how to create content for all these different things. So qualitative through Talkwalker or the social monitoring tool of your choice, quantitative through SEO tool, forecasting with a predictive analytics tool, and then this is where the YouTube part is really important. This is what we call the transmedia content framework. And we talked about this earlier. When you create a video, look at what you can turn one video into. The audio becomes a podcast that gets rendered as a transcript. The video clips can be turned into animations and GIFs. Giphy, by the way, folks, if you're unfamiliar, it's an animated GIF repository. Not that I want marketers to go ruin that too, but it's a great place for you to put your animated GIFs if they're relevant.
I know that Hootsuite, for example, has a bunch of GIF on there with their mascots and everything, and they use it quite a bit.
Exactly. Those short clips can become Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp stories. The YouTube videos can become webinars, which you can then pitch to conferences to get more video. Right? So this is that whole strategy. This is you figured out the what. You know the when, now this is the how. How do you make content that fits this? Starting with that video as a starting point. And then you feed that to your private communities to get their feedback and ultimately reach out to influencers outside of your private communities to distribute.
So I'm curious, Chris, so you actually have all of that in your content calendar. How early do you actually plan it?
So for what we do, we'll run a year's worth in advance and then update every quarter or so, just to see if there's something unexpected. But for the most part, again, I was saying, the reason we're doing this webinar right now is because we figured, based on our calendar, this week is the week people are starting to search for some of these search terms.
I remember we had this discussion when we started, and I actually told my team, wow, he even had a specific request as to which specific week he wanted he wanted the webinar to happen to make sure that we had as many of you guys in the room as possible. So pretty interesting.
Yep. So this is Talkwalker's Influencer One software, which allows you to then take that same query that you started with, Google Analytics, and look at who are the people who are potentially influential in that topic, and go out and reach out to them with the content that you know is probably timely, probably relevant, and probably going to benefit them as much as it benefits you.
Right, and we're back to what you were saying earlier about finding these niche experts that can really carry the word of mouth into their communities in a non-intrusive way, in a way.
Exactly. So that's the main takeaways from this. YouTube and the private communities are the two network things to watch. Slack, Discord, Microsoft Teams, Facebook groups if you have to. Your skills need to not be ancient, right? You need to be current with what these platforms are capable of today. And this is true of your team. This is true of your agencies. You should be asking your agencies when they come up for annual review, what have you done that's new and different lately on YouTube, on Slack? Do you have experience administering a Slack? Those are questions that would be good to ask an agency. And then you need a blended listening strategy, social, search, and predictive, to understand what, when, why, and how, to really inform your marketing and social media strategy.
Yeah, and then make sure that that data is actually getting to, that decision-making part, because I've seen, so we see it a lot at Talkwalker, we see a lot of team collecting tons of data, but not actually doing anything with it, which is really interesting. So make sure you're doing, well...
I can say that.
It's human. I have the same problem, to be honest. You get so carried away in the operational reality of your job that you just keep going. So make sure that you're doing the most of all the tools you have in-house. Make sure you cross that data, that you integrate. If you can have as many data sets on one platform as possible, I think that's great. And that's kind of I guess what we try to do at Talkwalker by allowing people to import their own data also into the platform. So whether you're talking about customer satisfaction rate, web traffic data, things like that, to help you kind of have a broader picture. But you're right, there's no tool that has everything, so you have to find ways around it to try to have a 360 picture of all of that.
Yeah.
Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.